back to Working on It. I'm Dr. A and I'm a clinical psychologist aiming to make your life just a bit more manageable. Remember, the tools and the tidbits that you pick up on this channel are purely educational. They can't replace therapy, but with some practice, they can help you along in your daily life. So let's get started. It's been a little bit. I'm excited to be talking to everyone again today. Today we are going to be talking about self-handicapping. What is it? Why do we do it? And how do we stop? Now, some people call this self-sabotage. That works too, but the psychological term is self-handicapping. It's kind of exactly what it sounds like. It is truly, when somebody's walking and somebody else puts their foot out and that person trips, it's like we do that to ourselves and then we fall flat on our face. But we do it because we would rather get to us and have it be predictable than something else get to us and either fail or get hurt. We're like, no, we would rather do it to ourselves. It's like tickling ourselves. At least we could handle that and have something to blame it on. We're talking very abstractly, so let me give you some examples as I do so that we can start to hone in on how we could apply it to our lives. Have you ever noticed that sometimes when in a relationship, whether it's a romantic relationship or a friendship, things are going well or things are going fine, and we get in there and we find a way to ruin it. We find a way to make ourselves miserable. We either nitpick on something or we create a scenario in our minds that doesn't exist, right? Because we would rather be the ones to ruin it and hurt ourselves than that other person hurt us. That's way more unpredictable. That's way more scary, right? Now, what about in school? I'll give you an example in school or at work. Let's say at work you have a big deadline and a big project, or you're in college or in school, and the next day is like this massive test, right? There is a risk to studying or working hard on that project and then not doing well. There's a risk to that. So what do? Well, we mitigate that risk by going out the night before, maybe drinking too much, maybe staying out late, maybe not going to bed at 3 a.m. And when we don't do well, or if we don't do well, instead of having to feel that sting of, I failed or I didn't do well, instead of having that sting, guess what? We have something to blame it on. That feels way better. It feels way better, even though we didn't do well, to be like, well, of course I didn't do well on the SATs. I stayed out all night the night before. How could I have done well? It's not me. It's this thing. Man, I stayed out, and that's why. Of course I didn't do well on that project. I was drinking all night. I wasn't right the next day, right? We truly sabotage ourselves. Nobody's doing it to us. So you see, the reason why we do this self-handicapping thing is because we're afraid to fail, we're afraid to not do well, right? We're afraid of getting hurt by someone or something. So we're like, you know what? It feels too threatening and it feels too risky to be injured like that. For our ego to be injured like that. So I'm going to make sure that there's a damn good reason for it. That kind of has nothing to do with me. It was the alcohol. It was the lack of sleep. It was how he didn't load the dishwasher right. And all I did was I pointed it out. I didn't start a fight. I just pointed it out. Right? It feels way less risky to have something to blame it on. Real life, ambulance, cops, I don't know. I'm sorry. Okay? But we have to start noticing when we get in our own way, because there is too much that happens in life that gets in our way, that's out of our control, for us to be adding on top of that. Take the risk. Take the risk of getting into that relationship and just being happy in the moments that are happy, and maybe things don't work out, and yes, maybe it does break your heart. Take the risk instead of on purpose tripping yourself and ending it or getting into fights unnecessarily. Take the risk of really, really, really studying hard and yes, maybe not doing well on that test. Take the risk of that. Take the risk of working really hard on that work project and doing it by that deadline and sleeping well the night before. Take the risk of putting your all into it and not doing well. Because at least then you can probably succeed, right? If you study really hard, you're probably going to do well. If you allow yourself to be in the moment in those relationships without tripping yourself, you probably are going to be successful in that relationship. And that sliver of risk is so worth it, because the alternative of us doing it to ourselves is a definite ending. It is definite failure. It is definite heartbreak. It is definite getting on the other person's nerves or them getting on your nerves. The risk that life gives us, whether it's at work or relationships that feel so threatening, is worth it. Because what if we succeed? What if we actually do well, right? And let's say the risk comes true that we actually studied really hard and we didn't do well. We actually allow ourselves to be fully with the other person in a relationship and it doesn't go our way. Well, then guess what? Lesson learned. When we do it to ourselves, when we self-handicap, there is no lesson to be learned. When life happens to us, lesson learned, right? Either we do well or we get to learn a lesson from it. So how do we fix this? Well, first of all, we need to understand that this self-handicapping thing exists, right? Now we know. Now we know why it exists, because we're afraid of getting hurt and we're afraid of failing and we'd rather have something to blame it on. Now, how do we make it stop? The good old just self-awareness. We make it stop by the next time we are doing some of this questionable behavior, whether it's at work or at school or in our relationships or with our friends. I really want you to work very hard and remember in this video, have it rattling around in your mind somewhere and notice yourself doing it in real time. That's the most powerful tool of all, is to be like, oh my God, I'm doing that thing Dr. A talked about. I can see myself doing it. Okay? Now, how we're going to do it is maybe we're going to find 2 or 3 places where you need to look specifically in your life where you know that you do this to yourself. That's how you're going to notice the next time you're doing it. So when this video ends in about a minute or so, I want you to only write down 2 or 3 times, 2 or 3 specific examples in your life where you know that you tripped yourself and you fell flat on your face. You know that you self-handicapped. What are those areas? And that's where you're going to look. If your 2 out of 3 areas happen to be at work, if your 2 out of 3 areas happen to be with boyfriends, girlfriends, husbands, wives, look very carefully in those areas next time, okay? This self-awareness sounds so simple, but it changes your life long term. It really does. It really does. So when this video ends, write down 2 to 3 specific examples. Look at what places in your life those examples are in, and we could get going from there, okay? I post videos every Tuesday and Friday, and in the next 2 videos, we will be talking about how to resolve your fears, how to get over your very specific fears, your very specific phobias, once and for all, regardless of what that phobia is. This is truly what I do with people in therapy when they come to me and say, I'm afraid of elevators, I'm afraid of dogs, I'm afraid of flying. I'm afraid of flying. We'll talk about that next time. I'll tell you all about it. So come along and watch. If you have any phobias, which all of us are scared of something, I will tell you step by step how to truly get over that fear. Okay? In the meantime, write down those 2 to 3 things about the self-handicapping. Practice, look for it, be an inspector, an investigator in your own life, and you'll see that you could really bring about some change, and you could really maybe make your life a happier place to be for yourself and the people in it. Okay? You got this. See you next time.